This is a king cobra, a large and incredibly venomous snake. It has enough venom to kill an entire herd of elephants. This is a black mamba, second only to the cobra in length. It's aggressive, venomous, and Africa's most dangerous snake. And this is a mongoose, weighing just over 2 kilograms. And this mongoose is about to kick some snakes' asses. Mammalian psychopath. Just a gentle reminder to do something below this video. Well, you get the idea. So, let's start with the king cobra, because it's a snake that knows how to make an impression. When threatened, it can stand up, raising up to a third of its body off the ground, and look an adult human straight in the eye. And in this position, the cobra continues to attack. The very height makes it even more dangerous. It's one thing to risk being bitten by something small below, but quite another when it's a snake up to 5.4 meters long. Incidentally, this is an absolute record among all venomous snakes. The good news is that its venom isn't the most potent in the world, but the key is its quantity. A cobra releases up to 60 milliliters of neurotoxin in a single bite. This is enough to kill 20 people. The venom attacks the respiratory centers in the brain, causing respiratory arrest and heart failure. It's no surprise, then, that few animals in the wild are willing to attack a king cobra. To attack and survive the attack. There are only a few brave souls, and among them is the hero of our video today, the mongoose. Have you ever seen a mongoose? There are about 20 species, and they all look different, but they all share common features: an elongated body, short ears, and a resemblance to weasels. Some species of mongoose attack venomous snakes and even eat them. However, their kinship with weasels is deceptive. In the world of predatory mammals, there are two great teams: dogs and cats. Weasels are closer to dogs, but mongooses, despite their similarities, are truly part of the feline family. These animals lead a colonial lifestyle, living in groups where each person relies on their neighbors. Keep this in mind, we'll come back to it later. As for its range, it's primarily found in Africa, South Asia, and Southern Europe. The key thing to understand is that the mongoose is a small animal. When it goes into battle against a snake, at first it looks as if the cobra has the advantage, and the mongoose plays the role of a harmless little creature. A timid but curious little creature sniffs the snake. The snake responds differently. It coils up, begins to hiss loudly, and if it's a cobra, it spreads its hood, clearly signaling that it's best to retreat. Then comes the first lunge, and it's almost always the snake that does it. She tries to scare off her opponent and, if she succeeds, sinks her fangs in. But the mongoose is prepared. It fluffs up its fur, making itself appear larger and more dangerous. And yet, the little creature still seems hesitant. It lunges forward, only to immediately retreat, again and again. But in reality, this isn't indecision, but a calculated tactic. The mongoose entices the cobra to attack, provoking it, never allowing it to relax. Thus begins a deadly game, where neither is allowed to lose concentration for even a second. If they look away for even a moment, it's all over. The mongoose's goal is to exhaust the cobra as much as possible. It dodges strikes, leaps to the side, lunges, but never delivers a decisive bite. Every movement is acrobatic, and this can sometimes last for an hour. The mongoose's secret is that it takes its time, seemingly testing how long the cobra is prepared to fight. Only when its fury gradually fades, when its movements become slower and less precise, does the animal begin to act more forcefully. It bites the cobra, forcing it to strike again, expending more energy. This is the most crucial stage of the fight. If the mongoose makes a mistake here, or if it receives too many bites, it simply won't be able to continue the fight. But if it holds out and waits until the cobra is completely exhausted, then it will have a chance to deliver the fatal bite. And all this tension leads to one moment: the decisive blow. It's vital for the mongoose not to rush in blindly or bite randomly. If it did, the cobra would have a million opportunities to sink its fangs in and end the fight in its favor. But the mongoose seems to have a precise map of the snake's body. He waits, calculates, and attacks only when her weakest point, her head, is exposed. That's where he lunges, with a swift lunge and the precision of a surgeon. A powerful bite lands directly on the skull, shattering bone and damaging the brain. Sometimes the cobra dies instantly, but if not, the mongoose doesn't let go of its prey and begins slamming it against the ground until the end comes. Such scenes have been observed and documented by scientists. As early as 1944, British naturalist Edward Pritchard described a fight between a mongoose and a king cobra. The animal's quick reflexes and precise attacks left the snake no chance. It all ended the same way as hundreds of other similar encounters. Some experts, incidentally, claim that mongooses defeat venomous snakes in 75% to 80% of cases. Frankly, it's hard to imagine who and how could calculate such numbers in the wild. But even without statistics, it's clear this strategy works. The mongoose doesn't give the cobra a single chance. Yes, it does happen that the snake manages to inflict 1 or 2 bites, but even then the mongoose emerges victorious because it's well protected. Remember that moment just before the fight when the mongoose first stands on end. It's not just for show, this defense actually works. The thick, stiff fur softens the blows of the snake's fangs and often prevents them from penetrating deep into the skin. Even if the bite does reach its target, the dose of venom may not be enough to cause fatal injury. But it's not just the fur. The mongoose's skin itself is adapted to such combat. It's thick and spongy, making it much harder to pierce than the thin skin of most other animals. This gives the mongoose a chance to wriggle free, even if a cobra sinks its fangs into it, despite its fur. And there's another unexpected element of defense: scales around the anus. They form a kind of miniature armor. This detail may seem strange, but it's precisely this that prevents the snake from biting into the body where it's particularly vulnerable. Incidentally, the same hair that helps mongooses avoid cobras has also turned them into victims of poachers. Expensive artist brushes are made from this unusual mongoose hair, medium thick, sharply pointed, and stiff enough to render the finest details. Artists around the world consider these brushes exquisite. In 1972, India banned the hunting, sale, and purchase of mongooses and any of their parts due to excessive flaying for fur. However, poaching continues due to demand. In the early 2000s, approximately 50,000 mongooses were killed annually, and although more recent data is scarce, experts claim the black market continues to thrive. But let's return to the confrontation between mongooses and cobras. If a cobra does sink its fangs into a mongoose, it doesn't mean the fight is over. The animal may suffer no consequences from the initial bite. This is where chemistry comes into play. The first line of defense is the receptors. Mongooses' brains contain acetylcholine receptors, which are typically targeted by snake neurotoxin. Most animal venom blocks these receptors, paralyzing muscles and causing death. But mongooses have a special mutation: their receptors are structured slightly differently. This small structural detail prevents the toxins from binding, allowing the venom to bypass the nervous system, remaining harmless. Ultimately, it is simply excreted by the kidneys and liver. It is this mutation that makes mongooses resistant to the venom of cobras, mamas, and kraits. The second line of defense is blood proteins. The mongoose produces a glycoprotein that binds to the venom and neutralizes it. This allows moderate amounts of venom to cause no serious harm to the animal. These mechanisms were studied in detail back in the 20th century. Scientists have noted that the differences in receptor structure between mongooses and other mammals are minimal, but sufficient for defense against the disease to be triggered. However, it's important to understand that mongooses are not completely immune. If a snake bites multiple times or injects too much, the mongoose may become ill or even die from the venom. Therefore, the animal never relies solely on biology. Its main allies remain agility and speed. Incidentally, there's another important detail: resilience varies. Different species and even individuals may have more or less effective defenses. Some have more mutated receptors, others have higher concentrations of glycoproteins. In any case, this isn't a foolproof armor, but rather a defense bonus that gives the mongoose a fighting chance where most other animals would have zero. And now, like me, you're probably wondering, could mongooses be used to create antidotes? So far, only in theory. Typically, controlled doses of venom are administered to horses to obtain anti-venom. The main reason is that horses are larger and tolerate the procedure better. Perhaps the unique properties of the mongoose could also be used in anti-venom research in the future, but only in the future. There's no talk of that yet. But what happens if a cobra does bite a mongoose? In most cases, the first bite isn't fatal. It may cause localized pain and slight swelling, but the animal quickly recovers and continues hunting. For example, sometimes a cobra sinks its fangs into a mongoose, and the mongoose squeals and retreats, even though the venom isn't fatal. The mongoose is simply in pain. And then everything depends on the animal's mood. If a mongoose is extremely hungry, it will almost certainly return to its deadly dance, attempting to kill the snake again and again. If its appetite is weak, you can wait, be patient, and it may retreat and try its luck another day. But the danger always remains. Many venomous snakes, especially cobras, are much larger than mongooses and can put up a serious fight. Sometimes they kill the mongoose before it can finish the fight. Even if the mongoose wins and kills the snake, the threat remains. Snake fangs can damage the stomach or other organs while the mongoose is eating the snake. This damage will cause internal bleeding and fluid leakage, which quickly leads to death. So, the fight is a choice between starvation and risking one's life. Every bite and every maneuver can be decisive, and the mongoose must remain alert and quick from start to finish. But all these somersaults and tricks work on the ground. But what if the snake ends up higher up, in a tree? It turns out the strategy still works there. 35-year-old guide Ankia Pusey observed such a case in the south of Kruger National Park. It was a cool day with a light drizzle, and she was driving along the ring road. Suddenly, she was drawn to the alarming cries of starlings, a signal of a snake's presence. When the open safari vehicle stopped, Ankia realized something was happening in the sickle-shaped bush. There was movement inside. This large black mamba was climbing to the top of the bush, disappearing among the leaves. A slender mongoose moved toward the mamba from below, weaving through leaves and branches. It bit the snake on the torso and immediately descended, escaping the counterattack. The mamba crawled back to the top of the bush and lay low. But the mongoose climbed up again, bit again, and descended again. This continued for about half an hour, the animal repeatedly attacking from below, harassing the mamba, but remaining safe. Finally, the mongoose also climbed to the top of the bush and came face to face with the mamba. The snake rose and opened its jaws, but the mongoose acted faster and hid among the branches each time. It bit the mamba several times without receiving any serious blows in return. By this point, the mamba was exhausted and defeated. Interestingly, the mongoose eventually simply left. It's unknown why. Perhaps it was the female, protecting her cubs, who simply needed to make sure the mamba wouldn't harm them. But the main thing is that the little animal dealt with the venomous snake in the tree just as easily as on the ground. Its strategy is universal. The question is, where did it come from in the first place? The relationship between mongooses and snakes is a fascinating example of evolutionary adaptation. Over time, mongooses have developed not only physical characteristics, but also complex behavioral strategies to cope with threats. This evolutionary arms race has made them one of the few animals capable of combating some of the most dangerous reptiles on the planet. Resistance to venom also developed over many generations through natural selection. Those mongooses that possessed at least some ability to resist toxins survived encounters with venomous snakes and passed these traits on to their offspring. Over time, this led to the enhanced biological defenses, precise attack strategies, and agility we observe today. Remember how I said mongooses live in colonies? Well, that plays a role, too, because they pass on their knowledge about snakes to future generations. Adult mongooses teach their young in several stages. First, the babies are introduced to dead or sick snakes, which are incapable of harming them. And only then do they gradually move on to live prey. A methodical approach is crucial here, as it will help develop skills and confidence, which will save the animals' lives in the future. Therefore, when adults attack a rattlesnake in a crowd, the young ones don't stand by. They stay as close to the adults as possible, observing their every move. Gradually, the babies begin to imitate their parents and join in attacks on snakes, acting as full members of the group. However, the hatchlings are kept under strict supervision. If the situation becomes dangerous, or if one of the babies tries to get too close to the snake, the adult caretakers immediately intervene and pull the young to safety. Thus, through observation and repetition, the young mongooses learn to deal with venomous reptiles, and then they themselves take over as teachers, and the cycle repeats. In fact, mongooses are so skilled at fighting snakes that neighbors even hire them. Cape ground squirrels live in groups in underground burrows in the arid and semi-arid regions of South Africa. And they aren't the only ones using these burrows. Yellow mongooses regularly use these burrows to escape the elements, and the rodents allow them to do so, benefiting both. The mongooses get shelter, and the Cape ground squirrels get reliable protection. If a ground squirrel spots an approaching predator, such as a snake, it gives an alarm call. This sound is heard by all the neighbors, including the mongooses, who sleep in the same area. As soon as the animal peeks out and sees a venomous snake nearby, it's likely to kill it. It's almost like having dinner delivered to your door, only for free. This isn't fiction, but a documented incident, recorded on video and shown in a documentary. In such circumstances, the mongoose can safely be called a living security system, specialized in snakes, reliably protecting its neighbors and reaping a ton of benefits in the process. However, not all scientists agree that this is precisely how mongooses interact with their neighbors. A series of experiments compared the behavior of solitary Cape ground squirrels with meerkats and yellow mongooses. The squirrels spent less time awake and more time foraging in the presence of meerkats, but increased their vigilance when yellow mongooses were nearby. In another series of experiments with a noisy adder, Cape squirrels were particularly active in repelling the snake when near meerkats, not mongooses. The scientists note that meerkats and Cape squirrels mutually benefit, while yellow mongooses likely merely use the squirrels' burrows for shelter and temperature regulation. Furthermore, a number of other animals also benefit from the habitat changes created by Cape squirrels. This species can generally be called ecosystem engineers of the arid and semi-arid regions of South Africa. While the scientific community is divided on this issue, some connection between mongooses and Cape ground squirrels can be discerned. A mongoose can indeed come to the aid of a squirrel, even if it doesn't realize it's doing something kind. But why do mongooses even attack venomous snakes? Is it some kind of innate disdain for danger, like honey badgers? There are actually two reasons: hunting and self-defense. First, mongooses are ferocious hunters. They most often kill snakes to eat them, as snakes are a staple of their diet. Mongooses aren't particularly picky. However, their diet includes insects, rodents, birds, and other small animals, so a snake isn't anything special. It's just food, albeit a little more dangerous and requiring a little more effort than usual. Examples of hunting in trees clearly demonstrate this, and there are plenty of such examples. While vacationing in Kruger, a tourist filmed a mongoose leaping at a much larger, venomous black mamba hanging from a branch. The mongoose literally swung at the snake in midair, trying to drag its prey to the ground. The snake's head was hanging low, bleeding, and the mongoose gave it no chance to escape. This went on for almost 5 minutes, and eventually the snake fell, and the mongoose got what it wanted. So, he really wanted to eat the snake, and that was the whole point of the attack. But there's a second point to this story. Secondly, mongooses have to defend themselves and their young from venomous snakes. A prime example is the banded mongoose, which lives in groups. What you see is the first time the mongoose babies have left their burrow. They explore everything around them, but the first thing on their minds is, of course, food. So the cubs try to find it, periodically taking breaks to play, because, well, they're cubs. The young are accompanied by their parents, who keep an eye on the surrounding area in case of danger. The cubs try to stay close to the adults to learn how to hunt, should the hunt ever come. But a few of the cubs get carried away playing and lose contact with the others. At some point, they realize they're completely alone, with no one nearby except a rattlesnake. These two don't know anything about snakes, yet they haven't received any training from their parents on how to handle them. A direct confrontation could be fatal. The babies squeal frantically, but it seems no one but the snake can hear them. To escape, they need to run, and they have only one direction away from the snake. Fortunately, the adults have already noticed the loss and are looking for the babies. The situation for the snake changes dramatically. From hunter, she becomes prey. And although the mongooses will likely eat her later, their original goal was to protect themselves and their young. And the snake? It was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. She's not alone, though. This python chose the wrong meal for dinner. The snake initially tried to strangle a mongoose, but didn't look at the species it was dealing with. See the stripes on their backs? They indicate that these are striped mongooses, highly social mammals native to sub-Saharan Africa. The python's attack on one of them was perceived by the mongooses as an attack on the entire family. All 15 animals pounced on the snake at the same time. Most videos show scenes of one mongoose fighting one snake. This is what happens most often. Most mongoose species are solitary and forage for food on their own. However, the banded mongoose lives in colonies, averaging 20 individuals and led by a dominant male. When confronted by a snake or other predator, the group acts in a coordinated manner, pooling forces and protecting vulnerable members. Their fearlessness and willingness to cooperate make mongooses a force to be reckoned with. Any predator that wants to feast on one of their family members will have to deal with the rest as well, and they will quickly regret their decision. Banded mongooses use a defensive tactic known as mobbing. The group forms a tightly packed group, moving in unison and screaming to appear as one massive enemy. Although each individual hunts for prey independently, when confronted by a snake, the hunt quickly becomes a collective one. Interestingly, Banded mongooses attack pythons far more often than necessary. Even if a python is simply sleeping peacefully under a bush, mongooses won't rest unless they designate it as their daily meal. Mongooses make quick work of smaller, but venomous prey, such as scorpions. The animal is held by its hind legs and thrown into the air repeatedly. The mongoose doesn't even bite off its deadly stinger before delivering the fatal bite. Then the scorpion is simply eaten like a very spicy potato chip. Now I want to show you a completely different kind of hunt, one that resembles a tug-of-war. The mongoose has grabbed hold of the lizard and won't let go, and the lizard is resisting with all its might. Neither is willing to give in, and the fight rages on right in the middle of the road. At some point, the little creature changes tactics. He aims not for the body, but for the eyes. With one precise move, he rips out the lizard's eye, and now the lizard has almost no chance. Partially blinded, the snake becomes disoriented, and the mongoose easily drags its prey across the road. Surprisingly, these animals have different tactics for different opponents. When it comes to snakes, the mongoose doesn't bother with its eyes. It's too dangerous. The venomous fangs could end up right in front of the snout. So a different strategy works. Wear down the enemy, bring it to a point where it's no longer so dangerous. But with a lizard, it's different. It can't deliver a venomous bite, but it can escape. So the fastest and most reliable way to stop her is to blind her, at least partially. But it turns out mongooses fight not only with lizards, scorpions, and snakes. They also wage war within their own world. Scientists say the entire society of banded mongooses is built on constant incitement to conflict. They can drive out relatives, kill their young, and even resort to cannibalism. And this is only within a single family. And when it comes to encounters with neighbors, wars occur up to 4 times a month. The scene is impressive. First, 2 groups line up opposite each other, as if in battle formation. Then the mongooses curl up into balls, writhe, and squeal. The noise is so loud, it's hard to mistake it for anything else. It's usually the males who are at the forefront. Their numbers determine who wins a fight. It's no surprise that young males receive more care and are less likely to be ostracized. They are carefully raised, as they are extremely important for future fights. Yet this constant aggression has an unexpected side effect. Research shows that the higher the risk of conflict with neighbors, the better protected the cubs are. Adults become especially vigilant, watching out for rivals and also noticing other predators. This gives the young a better chance of survival. It's a paradox. Wars that exhaust and maim adults simultaneously make life safer for children. A like is in order. See you soon.